Kala Yahawah, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rokakadash. Double honors unto the elders and the apostles who taught me this truth. This is your brother Dawad, the real brother beloved, and this is only for the elect.
Only for the elect.
Ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows.
We begin with the major new developments in China's coronavirus outbreak. 2 major cities are now under lockdown as China races to contain the mysterious illness that has killed at least 17 people. Another city is shutting down all their train stations.
Quarantine orders affect more than 18 million Chinese citizens. The virus has infected nearly 600 people in at least 6 countries, including the U.S., where a second possible case was reported overnight in Los Angeles.
This is 2 Ezra chapter 16, verse 1, and it reads, Woe be unto thee, Babylon and Asia. Woe be unto thee, Egypt and Syria. Gird up yourselves with cloths of sack and hair. Bewail your children and be sorry, for your destruction is at hand. A sword is sent upon you, and who may turn it back? A fire is sent among you, and who may quench it? Plagues are sent unto you, and what is he that may drive them away? But this is a judgment set unto Esau, Edom, Moab, and the other nations. Shalom, Yasharala. Salutations to the hopeful elect. There's no other way to begin other than to say we'd have to be hiding under a rock to not see this major prophecy coming to pass. There are already several videos worth mentioning, starting from the elder apostles on down, regarding the coronavirus. Just to bring you up to speed, the total number of confirmed cases is now at 900 plus, 26 dead. China restricts travel for 40 million people as the death toll surges. 2 deaths have been reported outside of Wuhan. Some residents displaying symptoms are being turned away from hospitals. Hospitals in Wuhan make urgent pleas for help and supplies. The UK and US governments tell citizens to avoid outbreak zones. And again, there are multiple cases across the world, from Scotland to Singapore and the US. And the World Health Organization says not a time to declare a global health emergency, but make no mistake, this is an emergency in China. So this video is about me going back to what I stated in the beginning of the year concerning the naming of the months by the Romans, who were and are Edomites, the wicked pursuant to Job, chapter 9, verse 24. And through the Spirit, how we can easily see these things are playing out. The Hansel and Gretel of the nations is definitely Esau, Edom, always leaving a breadcrumb indicative of his false sense of pride. He always needs to leave his mark on his wicked acts so that those who have eyes to see know exactly who's responsible, specifically his own who deal on the left-hand side. This is Psalms chapter 64, verse 5, and it reads, They encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune of laying snares privily. They say, Who shall see them? Now this verse speaks to the point I was trying to make concerning the elite's clandestine efforts. They encourage each other's wickedness by leaving their calling card, unbeknownst to the profane who are not privy to their hallmarks, the matter being a sense of pride. This is Psalms 10 and 4, and it reads, The wicked, through the pride of his countenance, will not seek after Yahawah. Yahawah is not in all his thoughts. Meaning, at no time does Esau consider Yahawah, to who they owe their rulership to, is bearing witness to their wicked acts. Again, they're blinded by their pride. In any event, we are now nearing the month of February. The Roman month Februarius was named after the Latin term februm, which means purification, via the purification ritual Februa, held on February 15th, the full moon in the old lunar Roman calendar. January and February were the last 2 months to be added to the Roman calendar, since the Romans originally considered winter a monthless period. Now, of the Latin term februm, it is said perhaps to stem from the Latin febris, meaning fever, from Proto-Indo-European extension, the root meaning to burn. Now I'm going to use Wikipedia to give you the definition of a fever, apu, ramji, inside joke, to assist in this prophecy, which simply means to say before. Fever, also known as pyrexia and febrile response, is defined as having a temperature above the normal range due to an increase in the body's temperature set point. In layman's terms, an abnormally high body temperature. Now, fevers can be caused by a number of factors. An infection such as strep throat, the flu, chickenpox, or even pneumonia. Now, interestingly enough, the coronaviruses are types of viruses that typically affect the respiratory tract and are too associated with the fever-inducing pneumonia, as well as the common cold, and at the far end of the spectrum, SARS, or severe acute respiratory syndrome. Now, as far as I'm concerned, given the new moon, we're already in the month of February, so it is no surprise nearing Februo will be the month in which these demons unleash this obvious man-made disease / orchestrated health scare. History dictates Esau purifies or purges by making sacrifice. Now, why I deem it as such and what drew me to this conclusion, I'm going to share shortly. But for the record, I should say up front that mainstream media, who I consider to be the unofficial arm of the government, is lying and covering up the extent of this virus. What they're not telling you is the kind of power that the powers that shouldn't be possess. At any given time, they can allow this virus to spread like wildfire, or they could simply press the kibosh button on the whole thing after gauging the fear factor reading, meaning obtaining an assessment of how many will comply out of sheer fear, which they can then begin their agenda to mandate vaccination. The point of the matter is there's never been a patented disease or virus they couldn't cure. What they're not factoring in is the will of the Most High Power. Perfect example is the article on the right. Sorry, I don't call it a coincidence when the commanding general of biowarfare and one of the elite's harbingers of death himself has already dropped the proverbial breadcrumb that can be found in at least several articles written in the last 18 months regarding the prediction of a global pandemic. This is Psalms chapter 10, verse 7, and it reads, "His mouth is full of cursing and deceit and fraud. Under his tongue is mischief and vanity. He sitteth in the lurking places of the villages. In the secret places doth he murder the innocent. His eyes are privily set against the poor. He lieth in wait secretly as a lion in his den. He lieth in wait to catch the poor. He doth catch the poor when he draweth him into his net." Is it me, or were these verses specifically written for the rich dummy and his wife? Every opportunity they get, it seems they're sticking somebody with something. By now, everyone should be familiar with the allegations surrounding Mr. Gates' comments and their overtones, which may suggest he's an advocate for population control. With that in mind, this latest development doesn't sit too well. This is Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 32, and it reads, "For their vine is the vine of Sodom, and of the fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are grapes of gall, their clusters are bitter." Meaning the lineage of Esau, Edom, the 1%, the elite banking families is evil, and nothing good is meant for those who are subject to the fruits of their labor. This is why I believe the release of the coronavirus was willful and orchestrated to call the masses, to gather intel on how the masses will react, and particularly in a state of emergency, being quarantined, and the effects of martial law. This is 2 Ezra chapter 15, verse 46, and it reads, "And thou, Asia, that art partaker of the hope of Babylon, and art the glory of her person, woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredom, that they might please and glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. Thou hast followed her that is hated in all her works and inventions. Therefore, saith Yahweh, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to waste thy houses with destruction and death." And so this is what you see happening now with China. China and Japan have stood in awe of American culture and lifestyle and have sought to imitate it on every level, including the way they treat Jake, They take advantage of us in our poverty and feed us garbage for a profit. They too live deliciously off of our pain, and so YAHAWAH'S will recompense. It is no secret that the scriptures and a belief in Yahweh in some of these Asian regions are frowned upon and outlawed, and some even killed. And so like Babylon before you, now it's time to pay the piper.
Andy joins us now with more on the coronavirus outbreak. So, Doc, what can you tell us about the case in Chicago, and what about other possible infections?
So, Dave, Illinois health officials confirmed that there is a second case of this coronavirus here in the U.S. The patient is a woman in her 60s. She visited Wuhan, China back in December and returned home in Chicago on January 13th. She's reported to be in stable condition and is being closely monitored. The good news is that she reportedly did not use public transportation and did not have symptoms when flying. As for other cases, the CDC is monitoring 63 other possible infections across 22 states, but they're still saying that the immediate risk to the general public is low.
So, Doc, is there a vaccine?
Heather, no, there is not a vaccine for the 2019 NCOV virus, and there is no specific treatment either.
These uprisings you see, rumors of war, water and food shortages, earthquakes in diverse places, sickness and disease spreading across the earth, is the beginning of sorrows for those who oppose the will of the Most High Power, and the beginning of Yahweh's indignation. If you've heard this truth, believe this truth, are drawn to it, but still haven't changed your ways, I suggest now is the time to repent. The writings on the wall, Babylon and these other nations will be destroyed, so saith the Lord.
And Doctor, we're hearing about this outbreak being linked to snakes. How so?
Yeah, Dave, Chinese scientists have analyzed the genetic sequence of the virus, and it really appears that snakes like the Chinese krait and the Chinese cobra may be the source of the deadly coronavirus. They concluded this after identifying that the 2019 NCOV was a mix or recombination of two coronaviruses. One was known to infect bats, but the other had origin that was unknown. After considering other animal hosts, scientists concluded that it may have come from snakes. Now, it's rare that coronaviruses jump from animals to people, but it is possible.
Bloodsuckers and vipers, that sounds about right. Shalom, Yasharallah.